Very good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to yet another uLaw webinar. In today's topic, we're going to talk about how you can get ready for a Law Society audit, some of the key aspects of an audit that we would like for you to keep in mind as you either proactively prepare for an audit or if you've been provided information about a specific date when an audit is going to happen for your firm. Regardless, we would like for you to know the key components of it. We'll specifically talk about kind of the practice management, financial management, file management aspects of the audit. We'll also highlight areas where you can go read more about certain things like policies and procedures and professional conduct, which may be part of your audit review as well. Okay. Now, today's webinar has been approved for 1 hour of professionalism CPD credits in the provinces of Ontario, British Columbia, and New Brunswick. So for all our legal professional friends joining us from these 3 provinces, welcome. Kindly use the title, Getting Ready for Law Society Audit, as the subject line for the 1 hour CPD when you clock that in your respective portals. Okay? Again, today's webinar is accredited for 1 hour of professionalism CPD credits. Like every other uLaw webinar, today's webinar has a very specific agenda to talk about the audit process, how you can better prepare for an audit, and we'll particularly talk about 3 major review subject areas. Okay? So we'll talk about the practice review, which is specifically talking about the methodologies and procedures that you use to record information, whether that's client communication, documentation, everything that you use to better represent yourself as a legal professional as part of this law society that you belong to, so that it reflects well on the profession. Then we'll talk about the financial review. This is where a lot of the audit specifically focuses on the bookkeeping or the record keeping of your firm, such as ledgers and journals, depending on the silos of accounting that you practice, whether you use trust accounts or only the general accounts. And if you have both, then obviously you have to have the books ready and in order across journals, ledgers for both your trust and general. We'll take a deeper dive later on. About the fee books, expense book, disbursements are some of the key documents that the auditors may ask you for. And any procedural documentation that can be sometimes more provincial in nature, such as the Form 9A, which is a very common document that needs to accompany any electronic fund transfer between, let's say, your trust account to your general account. And this is more specific to the province of Ontario. Okay, Form 9A as an example. We'll obviously talk a lot more about the financial documents, what you need to be prepared with, and what you can do to prepare yourself in advance in a very proactive measure, knowing what you know about these documents and how to prepare them. Okay, so why wait till the last minute? If you can be proactive, doing the right things, having the discipline within the firm, training everyone in your firm to have that same discipline, then we truly believe you can be a law firm or a legal firm that's audit ready at any given time. And the third major component that we want to highlight and focus is the technology review. So with the advent of technology and you being a modern legal professional in today's day and age, obviously there's a lot of forward-thinking technology that you may utilize to run your firm. You may be using whether that's computers, whether that's a bookkeeping software, legal accounting software, cloud software. Regardless of the spectrum and the wide variety of products and tools that you may use, which is very important, there are certain review components of those technology components, such as ensuring that you completely understand the backup procedures of the providers that you use to deliver your service. Okay, and if in today's day and age, obviously you have to have a better control over the utilization of your mobile devices. If you're utilizing that to capture information, store information, and access information over the internet. Okay? And this has become regular practice. It's just a component of the review that you need to be educated in and understand it better so that you can present it to these auditors about your comfort level and that you're confident knowing what you know about the technology components that you use to deliver your legal service. Okay? And as I said, I brought up the professional conduct review guidelines of the Law Societies of Ontario and British Columbia. I'll send you these links or share these links during the presentation. Would love for you to review it. We're not going to talk much about it because we're still building the expertise to talk about such a wide subject area. So we're today going to focus on practice review, financial, and technology review. But just so you understand, the professional rules of conduct is a component of your overall audit process. Okay, but how you market your service, how do you behave with your other colleagues, your subordinates. So there's many components or chapters, they call it, around the professional rules of conduct, which we'll touch upon briefly towards the end of the session. And last but not the least, we strongly recommend the use of any legal accounting or practice management, or if it's a combination of both, even better, a software product that can help automate many of these steps and procedures that you have to anyway conduct to generate these documents and really audit-proof yourself instead of spending manual effort in repeating and generating these documents again and again. Okay? And obviously, you as the legal professional, we request that you do your due diligence, do the homework, do the research. With Google being what it is, I'm sure you are able to search for information about products that best suit your firm. Invest in a really good legal accounting practice management software and figure out how you can best automate the generation of many of these documents that are most definitely going to be part of an audit review. Okay, so just to set a context in terms of the audit, the purpose, and obviously the big question about why me? Because every time an audit happens, many legal professionals go through that question. Is this a targeted, specific review on my firm? And the quick answer is no. The purpose of the audit truly is to promote a very high quality record keeping in terms of a legal firm or a law firm or a paralegal firm. And it's meant so that you can answer the pertinent questions so that the Law Society can audit you and provide you with guidelines about best practices that you're already doing. So they really appreciate you for some of those good things that you do. Obviously, have a look at all of your ledgers and journals to see if there are certain things that you're not doing the right way. Most certainly, they are strict about how you manage trust money, because trust misappropriation is not taken too lightly. And if there are issues, there are going to be suggestions depending on how serious certain components of these audits may happen. It may be a need for another review. But at the end of the day, the purpose truly is to establish an ecosystem of law professionals in this society within a province to provide an assurance of a very high quality of record keeping or bookkeeping. Okay? And again, ensuring the compliance requirements of the law society that govern you. And to answer the question about why me, truly I believe the audit is a proactive compliance measure and a bit of a problem detection tool because if some of the issues in the way you manage numbers and the way you represent numbers, if it's actually happening by design, there may be aspects of education that you need as a firm so that you can tweak the way you report those numbers. And for example, Form 9A, if let's say you as a firm don't manage and maintain, is maybe something that the Law Society would ask you to maintain going forward. But if you don't have a trust ledger to show, then that would be a much serious component, a problem that's dealt with based on its seriousness. Okay. But the bottom line is, I believe within the first 12 to 18 months of you starting a brand new practice as a legal professional, there are very high chances of you being put through an audit process just to make sure that you're in line with the Law Society's requirements for compliance. Okay? So as I mentioned earlier, knowing that there is a strong opportunity for an audit to happen to your firm, if you can actually, by design, across the firm, understand how to approach it, how to face it, and actually be more proactive in being happy to go through that process, and the readiness for an any-day audit, I think is truly where it would be ideal for you to look at things and not have the fear factor of having to go through one. Okay. So here's the key highlight on components that a legal firm may be audited on. Okay. So we spoke about the practice review, financial technology review that we'll think about. There's professional time management, and as I said, professional guidelines around how you manage your time, how you manage your colleagues and employees in the company, and things of that nature. So from a practice review standpoint, the key components that are highlighted are: how does the firm manage client information, matter or file information, and all the procedures that govern the communication and the correspondence between you and your client. And in terms of file management, do you have a proper procedure to manage unique file number, for example, unique file numbers for each matter that you create? Is it easy for you as a firm to identify and search for any matters within the firm? Or are you doing this over paper, which is taking you a lot of time to access information? So these are some of the aspects of the practice review. Financial review, very straightforward. How do you manage your trust and general account keeping or bookkeeping around these accounts, ensuring that the ledgers and journals are well maintained, and you have generated your reconciliation statements for both trust and general accounts on a monthly basis, at a minimum monthly basis. Okay? And we spoke about the technology review. It's about you being completely transparent and having the understanding of how the different technology components that you use to serve your clients, the proper safety guards that you take as a professional to protect yourself from technology failures, right? We strongly believe that technology is an amazing tool in today's day and age to help expedite things, to make it easier, to automate it, but to also be aware of the risk and reward of every technology component that you use in your firm is important, and that's what's being asked in your review. For example, if you use a cloud-based legal accounting or practice management software, you want to first understand if the data is, again, if you're a Canadian legal professional, you want to understand if the data is very much in Canada. Accessibility, do you have an encryption to encrypt data? Do you have an encryption to encrypt the entire site? What kind of security measures that your provider give you so that you're going to prevent hacking into the software? What kind of measures are the technology providers providing to always be up and ready and have very less downtime? Are providers giving you enough time ahead to talk to you about the service levels that they manage and maintain? So it's very important, right from your email to even your mobile phone, understanding the safety measures of that. So again, very simple things like actually having a password to open your mobile phone. So there are many components to the technology review that we'll quickly go through as part of our slide chart today. Of course, the professional and time management review, which really takes, maintaining high standards in terms of how you manage time, how you provide the appropriate response back to your client in time, and how you adapt and how you prepare yourself to be a very professional legal professional in serving your clients. Okay? Okay. So kind of moving along, and we wanted to take this slide just to give you a bit taste of how do you prepare yourself. So knowing what you know, here are the 3 or 4 major areas that you know that you're going to be audited on. How do you prepare yourself for that? Okay? And we, again, like to iterate that audits are not specifically, as I said, designed to scare you. It's not a fear-mongering practice. It was never designed to be that. It was designed, obviously, to find any issues or problems, because, as I said, it is a problem detection procedure. Because, if you're doing something wrong, you want to be able to correct yourself and amend any problems that the continued delivery of the same problem may result in your firm, right? So the earlier you have the audit, if you're doing everything right, nothing better than an auditor coming in and saying, you know what, you guys are doing a great job, continue to do a good job, right? And then you don't have to worry about it. You're just going to make that process as better as it can be. But if there is an issue, the earlier the audit happens, the better it is for you to correct yourself. Because, if you're just getting started, for example, if the audit happens within the first 3 to 6 months, for all pragmatic purposes, you may not have as many files to deal with. So correcting yourself early is going to set that design for all the other files that are going to happen as you grow your business. Okay? The case may be totally different if it's a large law firm or many years that's been in business and goes through an audit. There's obviously more back and forth and reconciliation and paperwork required. At the end of the day, audits are designed so that they can find any issues if there are any, right? They're not waiting to catch you on any issues, but if there are any, they want to correct them and give you the guidelines to follow through. So that leads to the question of why not start to be prepared for this audit guidelines from day one. And this will be very important and even more opportunistic for legal professionals who are just getting started. Obviously, for seasoned campaigners, seasoned legal professionals, this is either a reiteration of what you already know or maybe something that you can tweak within how you manage the process today within your firm to be more audit ready from day one. Okay. Number one is really understanding if you can build a procedure or a process within your firm to review these 3 or 4 major components of review factors on a regular basis. Okay. And you can set what that regularity should be, depending on your comfort, depending on how you use time. There are legal professionals that really manage and reconcile every day because they have the time or make the time to do it at the end of the day. There are legal professionals that do it at the end of every week. There are professionals that do it bi-weekly, monthly, and yes, there are professionals that may procrastinate and actually do it after a very long time. So the more you procrastinate, the more the fear factor internally of not having done the right thing, and that's when it leads to a cascaded effect of not doing the right thing from day one. So build that discipline if you can, please, to have a regular review of these important guidelines, important review factors, and you would be good. Financial statements, that's another big thing. When we talk about reconciliation, the Law Society clearly indicates that they would like for you to reconcile your trust and general account on a monthly basis. So again, just understanding what is a reconciliation process and not having this perceived fear factor of it being, a rocket science. Reconciliation is as easy as matching and ensuring that the record-keeping software that you have or record-keeping process that you have matches up with the real-life bank statements or the bank records in your real-life bank account. And if there's a mismatch, really understanding what the mismatch is, making those adjustments so that you know that the two numbers match, and that's what you provide as your monthly reconciliation. And once you've done it the first, second month, then automatically the third and months to follow are just going to be that much more easier. So it's always that starting point and doing it right from get-go is really what the discipline is required for. Okay? So just to give you a bit of an understanding of, again, this is just a guide or a help guide for you to review, and you can tweak how you go about these review process based on your firm's needs. But just to give you a bit of a teaser, some of the candidates that we believe that are great for any weekly checklist review would be your bank accounts. Okay? I mean, you are able to transact, depending on the number of transactions that you may have over a week. The smaller number of transactions, the better. But if you can make it a discipline to review them on a weekly basis, maybe on a Saturday afternoon or Sunday morning, sipping coffee, that would be fantastic, because then you can stay on top of your game and you're well prepared to meet the next week. Monthly checklists can include generating those trust and general reconciliation journals and ledgers, right? If you've done it on a weekly basis, at the end of the month, it's just basically reiterating what you've already dealt with over those past 3 weeks or 4 weeks, right? From a quarterly practice management standpoint, we look at certain components of the checklist, which is client communication, time management, any professional commitments such as CPD, so what you're doing today is fantastic, ensuring that you have those 3.5 hours of professionalism credits, reviewing them on a quarterly basis and exploring options to go get them, right, as an example, and reviewing your file management or matter management procedures. How do you manage files? How do you ensure that it's unique, even if it's a second or third file for the same client? Looking at how you communicate with your clients about each and every stage of the client's or the matter's life cycle with your firm. So right from that initial engagement or retainer letter to even prior to that, how do you intake a client information? What are the different process steps that go through in validating that client? Do you ensure a need for a scanned driver's license? Do you need a passport? How do you validate those things? Based on the areas of practice, what is your expected retainer amount? Have you communicated that clearly to your clients? So all that is part of that client communication. If you are using email or electronic format to generate and send information to your client, ensuring that the security protocols of those providers are something that you clearly understand so that you can communicate that back to your client as well as the auditors when they ask you for that, if and when they ask you for that. Okay. And of course, a yearly review could be both on the practice management, financial management, more importantly, which is your year end. How have you done as a business? Okay, so really reviewing the health of your business. Now, some may argue that you can do that every 6 months. So, we would leave that to you based on how proactive you want to be in managing the health of your firm, the business, I would say the financials, and when I talk about health, the financial health of your business. Okay, so is it a profit mode? Is it not so profit mode? What's the profit you're making? What areas of practice are you really doing well? Areas of practice that you hope to do well, but you're not. So those are the types of things that you really can review every year, every 6 months to a year, so that you can take that learning and apply it to your practice and just get better at it. Okay, so with another 30 to 35 minutes left in this webinar, what we'll try and do is quickly go through some key aspects or components of these individual practice areas or checklists. And as I said, we've got client service and communication, file management or matter management, and then we'll jump into financial management. Okay. We'll talk about what are retainers. So I'm just kind of giving you of what's to come in the next 30 minutes. because sometimes if I continue down the path, I might just be putting you to sleep, and you won't know what you're missing. And last, we'll look at how you can review, as I said, the different technology aspects of your business and knowing what you should know, asking all the right questions to your providers to be well educated and aware to communicate back to your client. Okay? And that's pretty much it for this webinar, but let me now, having given you a little bit of a preview of what's to come, start with the practice management checklist. For those who have just joined us, I think there's a few questions on our chat window. Today's webinar is on, let me just recap real quick, it's on the Getting Ready for Law Society Audit. We kindly request you to use this subject line to log your 1 hour of professionalism CPD credits for 1 hour in the provinces of Ontario, British Columbia, and New Brunswick. And we're talking about the audit process and what it takes to be prepared and review ready for this audit. And the three major areas that we're going to talk about are practice review, the practice management review, financial management review, and the technology review. And with a little bit of time, we'll talk about the websites that I would love for you to review to learn more about the professional rules of conduct. Okay? So let me move along to my practice review or practice management checklist. So we've broken it down into two major components. The first one is your client service and communication. Now, we do conduct very specific CPD webinars on everything practice management, and we talk about practice management checklists in further detail as well. But from an audit perspective, we wanted to highlight just the major highlights or components that you should be well aware of when it comes to audit readiness. So from a client service and communication perspective, very important that as a discipline, you have within your firm a process to docket and have a detailed notes for dealing with client information. So right from your client intake, ensuring that you've got their first name, last name, their communication address, or a correspondence address, depending on your specific areas of practice. This could be even it could be a charitable fund, it could be another organization that would be the correspondence address. Regardless, there's a need for that. So ensuring that either yourself or the assistant in the firm is ensuring that that information is captured, or you also have a backup plan to go back and ask for that information if you didn't have it in the first place. Okay? Having a process that once you've done that client intake, doing a conflict check, very important as part of that practice management checklist is that you've done or conducted a thorough conflict screening of the individual that you've just taken in as a potential client. And if there are conflicts, then what is your decision in accepting that client as a client and generating a matter for them or not? Okay. So let's say you have done that conflict screening, and if you have moved to the next level of creating a file for this client, then comes the component of, are you in the business of dealing with retainers? Do you have a trust account? Ensuring that a retainer, which is money that you accept before even doing the work, that you deposit that in the trust account. You don't deposit that into your general account. And especially if you're dealing with cash, because you can accept up to $7,500 of cash, even if it's a retainer, ensuring that you have the right process to deposit into. So this is a very good example of an audit trail that an auditor would be really impressed upon if you do it well. So accepting that retainer, parking it in a cash account, and then transferring that money from the cash account into your trust account, which is really mimicking the real life scenario. If a client provided you cash, you're not running like flash deposit it into the bank within the next second. You basically hold on to it. You have up to 24 hours to deposit it into your trust account. So you as a legal professional would hold it in your wallet, your purse. You may actually have it in your firm's office locker, or you may just have it in your hand. So mimicking that you did have it in your hand by parking it in a temporary cash account and then moving it from that cash account into a trust account really indicates the audit trail of how that money flowed within your firm. Okay? That's a great example of an audit step that's well appreciated if you have a well-defined process for that. Again, handling joint retainers, other parties that are associated in a file. Important that you capture additional parties because they're all going to help with a much better conflict screening procedure. You know, do you have a process for handling fee complaints? Any problems with correspondence? How do you deal with discounts? How do you deal with write-offs? If a client comes back to you asking you for a discount, are you able to provide that and reflect it in a document such as an invoice? There are legal professionals that often provide clients with a preview or a pre-bill prior to actually generating an invoice, just to give them the confidence that this is what they should expect for what's to come. So all these are critical components of that audit checklist in terms of how do you go about delivering these services. Okay? Some auditors may even ask to review your engagement letters, non-engagement letters, your retainer letters if it's well elaborated, okay, about how you go about doing what you do, how you manage money, and if you've clearly communicated that to your client. Do you have a cycle of how you would go about invoicing your client? If it's a corporate client, if it's a individual client, how do you actually differentiate in how you invoice? Is it done as soon as the docket is or a disbursement is charged? Do you do it over a period of time, every 2 weeks, every month? Have you communicated that clearly in that engagement or retainer letter? Okay, these may be very important things that are asked for. And next, moving along to file management or matter management and all the procedures internal to that. Very important that you actually have a good file naming convention for all your files, because it's important as per Law Society's guidelines that it's a unique file number, so you're not having the same file number for two different matters, even if it's for the same client. And it's easy for you to cross-index and search, especially for conflict screening. Right? So if you actually have created a matter for a client, Mr. Robert, and if you get another client by the name Robert, you need to be aware of that file that has been created for a client with the name Robert. Right? Very important, and this is a very common misconception that if I've got one client and if I have multiple matters, I can just have each matter with the same file name. It's really not the case. So you definitely need separate matter or file numbers for every matter, because every matter is unique, even if it's for the same client. Okay? And these are asked for. I mean, people would ask you to review, really depending on the auditor itself, but better be prepared for the entirety of what to expect. And if it so happens that your auditor comes in and says, all right, just show me your journals and ledgers, then that's great. Then you're equally ready for other things too, right? From a time management perspective too, I mean, are you able to manage files between different statuses so that your focus is on current files? You can have nomenclatures that are more meaningful to your firm. Active, closed, and archive are just examples. And very important point, how are you managing disbursements? Because disbursements are expenses that you incur on behalf of your clients. So the question is, do you disperse from your trust account, which means that your record keeping needs to be even better, because every touch point in your trust account needs to be well recorded. Or if you're actually paying for it upfront and then making it as part of an invoice, are you doing that within the right cycle, within the right planned month, or based on your retainer? Okay. How do you communicate the fee structure to your client? How often do you send invoices? the auditor may ask you to actually show them a copy of an invoice to see if all the information is very thorough and it makes sense for someone to review it and clearly understand where they are in the fee structure or what's been paid, what's been already moved from trust to general. So really providing a thorough financial touch point in that invoice makes it just easier for your clients not to come back with questions, because a lot of time is spent in clarifying an invoice, and that goes back to affecting your time management. Sometimes it may lead to irritation. Sometimes you may send out an email that's not so appropriate, or maybe it was never planned for. It was just so many things lead to many things, and that's why having it well planned, defined, structured, and bringing your client into that very refined structure is going to help your law firm. Very important. Many auditors we've heard do ask for a file closure statement, right? So once a particular matter or file is closed for a client, even if you have other active matters for the same client, at a matter level, do you provide both a logical closure as well as a closure from documentation, giving them a complete statement of activity, giving them a review of all the dockets, disbursements, giving them a copy of the retainers they've paid, how it's been used, how often the money was moved from trust to general, right? A settlement statement, bill of cost. Some clients may actually ask you for a bill of cost, and auditors may want to know, all right, if someone does ask you for a bill of cost, what is your action plan? Okay? And most definitely a closing letter, which really states that, hey, me as the legal professional have dealt with this matter of yours and have brought it to a closure, whether it's a POA matter or small claims, and really getting your sign-off from your client so that they don't come back to you saying, I didn't know that this matter was closed, right? So getting a closure in a file, very important. Okay, for everyone's favorite topic, financial management checklist. It starts right from engaging that client. We spoke about this briefly during the practice management checklist as part of the retainer agreement, but I think it has a better play within the financial management, which is really how do you structure your fees and how do you manage retainers. So trust management truly starts with retainers dealt right. If you're able to manage and structure how you ask for retainers and document it and capture each and every trust transaction in a planned way as per guidelines, then you're actually audit ready from that component from day one, right? There may be clients, legal professionals that don't deal with trust money. Then it's really a question of how do you protect yourself through that engagement letter to say the responsibilities of your client to pay you in time and what the consequences if they don't pay you in time are. And so those are very important components of the checklist too. If you are in the business of accepting retainers, then truly talk about disbursements, as I mentioned, whether it's going to be taken out of trust account or whether you're going to pay for it and then make it as part of the invoices. Very important, retainer receipts. So as and when you accept these retainers, whether they're cash retainer, even important if it's a cash retainer, because there's no other audit trail of that truly. So providing a cash or a retainer receipt for the cash received and providing it to your client, getting them to sign off, very, very important part of that financial management checklist, very important as part of that audit too. And important components that are part of every document, right? Each document has its own importance, has a certain essence and certain elements that are captured in that particular document. But some of the most common elements of every transaction are the date, the amount, the method, and what was it for and who was it paid to, right? The top 5 in most cases would be those 5. So very important that from a retainer as well as retainer receipt perspective, you capture the date they paid you the retainer, how did they pay it, what was it for? So clearly saying this retainer was for this particular matter, and getting them to sign off on it so they've agreed that it's actually $500 that they paid you and not $5,000. Because if you don't have that retainer receipt, they could always say that they paid you $5,000. And the last aspect, again, it's more to do with your business, but it's also important that you make it part of that audit process, is ensuring the appropriate taxes are dealt with. Now, for businesses that are just getting started off, you may not charge a tax, so it's important that you make a file where you actually charge them without taxes till you hit a certain revenue number. Now, for other businesses that have been in the business for a while, you are obviously going to be entitled to charge tax. You're also going to pay tax. So it's important that you capture both these components, and these are certainly documents that the auditor would be checking, would be at least wanting to know how you managed them in the process, okay? And we just wanted to, again, reiterate, because this was a feedback that we received from the group about really understanding what a retainer is. So I'll take just, very limited time to talk about it. Retainer truly is, we believe, fees that your client pays you in a form of an advance payment to a legal professional to secure or keep their services when required. So it's kind of a very layman definition on Wiki about what that is. But again, you're legal professionals, you already have a very good understanding of what a retainer is, but just reiterating the core components of what that retainer should contain, whether it's a receipt or a document, really ensuring that you have a plan of elaborating what the nature and scope of the work is. So what is that retainer for, right? As part of a retainer letter, is it for a, as I mentioned, POA, small claims, criminal matter? Really, what is the nature and scope of the work that you're going to be doing? Client obligation, so very important. So defining what those obligations are in that retainer letter. So whether that's them paying you a retainer top-up every time you hit a certain retainer number, right? So some clients have where I accept $1,000, but the minute that retainer hits $200, I will be asking you to top it up by another $800. So you can actually define the policies that govern the retainer and how a client retains your legal service. And it's important that if you define those rules, that you stick to those rules and then you follow them due diligently, and you require them to prove that you've been doing them due diligently. And that's pretty much the name of the game. How often would you communicate through an invoice about how that retainer money is being appropriately used? So very important that you send that formal document, which is the invoice, that outlines what you do. Okay, so for example, if you've just received $1,000 in retainer and you have a docket for $100 and a disbursement for another $100, in that invoice you would say, thank you for your retainer of $1,000. I've got a $100 docket and I've got a $100 disbursement, adding to a total of $200. Let's assume there are no taxes. And hence, I am moving now, as of today, the $200 from that initial $1,000 that you gave me, leaving with the balance of $800 in your retainer. Okay, so clearly communicating that your client is going to just make them feel happy. It's going to make them feel that they're dealing with a very professional firm, and it's going to make your record keeping, bookkeeping, and sticking to the rules and policies and documenting it that much more simpler. Okay, so just make it as part of that invoice template that you communicate how that retainer amount is slowly being drawn out of. So you've got to show effort to make that money. And ensure that you're doing those trust transfers in time and showing that as well. So the next time you generate a second invoice for that same client for, let's say, another $500, you can actually tell them, remember, I had already taken the $200 prior to this. And now with this new invoice for $500, it's a total of $700 that's going to be taken out of your retainer and leaving your retainer with a $300 balance. Okay? You could add about termination clauses, whether it's from your end or from their end, what those different aspects are. A retainer agreement can also contain confidentiality, can contain risks of using technology such as email, so you can talk to them in the right retainer document that you are going to be communicating, let's say via email, sending information, could be invoices, could be letters, could be documents. You may be using electronic signatures, which are a big thing now for legal firms, a huge convenience. But you may choose to add them as part of the retainer letter just to be more proactive in being clear with the policies that govern the client's interaction with your firm. Okay? All right. Again, just moving along with the financial management checklist, now that I've kind of looked at what a retainer is, continuing along. So we looked at this, I know we took a quick step break. So defining fee structures and dealing with retainers, we spoke about components of that. So let's say they have provided that retainer. As I mentioned in this previous example, invoice is a very important component, especially if you're dealing with retainers. It's actually one of the most important aspects that allows you to well define the work that has been accomplished and the appropriate fees that you're charging for the work accomplished, and hence the amount of money that you're going to be moving. The eligible trust transfer is the legal lingo for that. What is the eligible trust transfer that you as a firm can move from a trust account into your general account? And once that money lands in your general account, that's when the money is yours. Okay? So if in a $1,000 retainer, if you reflected $700 worth of work or disbursements or both, $700 is the eligible trust transfer, and that's the money earned. The remaining $300, technically, you haven't earned it yet, and that cannot be moved into your general account. Okay? So again, very important, because your audit may actually happen at a time when there are trust balances across all clients, right? It's not going to be that ideal situation where there is a zero balance in every trust account that you have. It may be the case if you're just getting started, but if you have many clients, an audit process may actually happen when you have $300 retainer, you have a $400 retainer balance for another client, adding up to a total, retainer balance in your trust account of about $3,000. The auditor is going to say, all right, show me record of why that $3,000, where all the money's gone, et cetera, right? So, you need to show them that, and that's just a big part of that reconciliation, big part of the journal and ledgers. So invoice balances, so that they know how much of money you're going to be transferring from trust to general. Getting paid from trust, very important, even important for disbursements. We have clients that very clearly articulate a retainer letter which says, knowing what I know about running this particular area of practice, if, immigration law or something like that, clearly say, this is my fee, my disbursement is about $1,000, so I'm going to add that as part of my retainer, and I'm going to disperse all your expenses out of the trust account. Okay? Very important that you communicate that in the invoice as well. If you're actually going to pay for it up front, and then make it as part of an invoice, and then do the trust transfer, that needs to be communicated as well. Okay? So it can either be disbursements right off trust, or it can be as part of an invoice and then becomes an eligible trust transfer to be moved from trust to general. Okay, and then if you're not dealing with trust, then you're just dealing with general, then it really comes down to, are you getting paid the exact amount of your invoice? Are you getting paid less? Are you having to deal with providing a discount? Are you reflecting that discount in your invoice or any document that you communicate? Clearly outlining all the disbursements that you've paid for, because that's money that you have to make from the client. It's a bit of a risk that you've taken without a retainer, but many clients do that. If you're working with families and friends who are clients, there's a certain leap of faith you can always take with those types of clients. Okay. Okay, so from a final component of financial management, let's say you've done the retainers right, you've got the receipts right, you've managed your invoices and the docketing right, communicated clearly in invoices, you've done all the trust transfers right, then it comes down to how does all that get documented or put into these documents such as ledgers. So you have client trust ledgers, that's for your trust account, trust receipts and disbursements, monthly trust reconciliations of your trust account, and as I mentioned, in province of Ontario, having a Form 9A for all of your electronic fund transfers from a trust to a general account. Similarly to the general account, managing general ledgers, journals, receipts, and disbursement expense journals. Additionally to the trust, then you have within the general account the need to show your fee book, where all your revenue is captured, your expense book, where your disbursements are captured, and very important, a record of all your discounts and write-offs. Because these are very practical things that actually may happen in your legal business, and these are all the documents that the Law Society is expecting you to provide to prove all the work that's happened within your firm. Okay? Because they wouldn't know if there's actually a write-off in your business, would they? Unless they actually ask you for a document that should reflect that write-off. And that's what it was purpose-built for. These ledgers and journals were purpose-built so they tell a story. By reviewing them, the auditor or the Law Society can have a better understanding of your firm's story with regards to financial management. Okay? And last component, taxes. We spoke about them. Depending on your situation, again, taxes collected, taxes paid, both for your CRA purposes as well as ensuring that taxes received and taxes paid are well managed as part of your financial management for a client. Okay? So again, once you've done all of that, ensuring that every invoice touch point is, there's clarity in providing that. There's a matter closure procedure, very important. So let's say you've done all this work. You've moved every last penny from your trust account into your general account. The work is completed, and now for you to provide a closure procedure document. That could be a single document that outlines all of this information. It could be multiple documents, such as the statement of activity, bill of costs, etc., that actually provide that story of closing it and all the numbers that are related to that file. Okay? And last but not the least, we've spoken about, from an audit perspective, the practice review components. We've spoken about or discussed financial review components. So keep in mind, the outcome of the audit review is reviewing your ledgers and journal documents, for example, from a financial management. But what's important is the discipline that you as a firm have to transact and record all those transactions as and when they happen, so that they automatically, in a very fluent way, reflect on those ledgers and journals which are being reviewed. So I think it's the discipline that's important that you need to build, so that once that's established, or if you have a legal accounting product that has that and you use it appropriately, that can automatically provide you with the appropriate documents that are anyway required to be provided to the auditors. From a technology standpoint, we briefly touched upon this, but the two areas that we would like for you to review and keep in mind, especially if you're using, or in fact for both desktop-based solutions as well as cloud solutions, it's very important that you understand the policy for backup and security, and understanding if there are any risks related to both sides of the house. So when I talk about cloud and non-cloud, let's say you use technology. If you use a desktop-based system, which means it's based, that particular product resides in your computer, If that computer is to be affected by virus, there's every chance of that happening, and you lose all the data, do you have a process, or what is your process or procedure or policy to back up that data? So if you have invested in a desktop solution, then it's your responsibility to either hire a third-party IT consultant, or you may do it yourself to back up all that data on a regular basis. The advantage of cloud compared to this particular component especially is that if you go with a cloud provider for legal accounting and practice management, that provider should give you that comfort of doing that backup automatically for you. So you need to understand, all right, what is that backup policy? Speak to that provider and ask them for that. If you're using a document management system to automate your documents and all the court forms and all of that, where do you store all those documents? Is it on the cloud? In which case, is it encrypted? Can you encrypt it? Or again, if it's going to be on your desktop, as easy as it is to assume that it's more secure in your desktop, it goes back to the same thing. What happens if your laptop is stolen? What if you don't have a password? Or what if someone can jailbreak into your laptop and recover all that data? Do you encrypt it before you store it into your laptop, or even your hard drive or your external hard drive? So having security procedures, if you don't have answers to these, then please do define those policies and procedures, which then become answers to these questions. Ask the same question to the cloud provider if you're using a cloud-based software. How secure is this? Where are documents stored? Where is my data stored? Is it how easy or hard is it for someone to access my data? Right? And once you define it, then you can be proud about making that as part of your law firm's policy procedural book and share that with your auditor, share that with your client, so that they all appreciate how professional you are as a legal professional in this industry. If you're using a desktop, it's very important that you must invest in a high-quality antivirus software, right? Because that can, in a way, mitigate some of those risks of your desktop being affected with virus. You accidentally open an email that you shouldn't have. Not that it's not happened to all of us when we are all excited about a new email with a fancy subject line. So when we click that, what are the repercussions to our, the security components of my machine, of the device that I'm using? So understanding your style of working, doing the appropriate homework to figure out what technology components are important to you as a professional, understanding the risks and rewards of those technology components, documenting them so that you can be proud of being aware of those risks and you're communicating them back to your auditor and or your client are key aspects of this slide, things that we would love for you to take away. And we must stress upon the need, not just for any software, but legal accounting software that can combine practice management components to it. And this is not to flaunt uLaw's capabilities, it's really to flaunt a legal accounting and practice management software capabilities. And this could be any software, right? There are many other examples of software that do legal accounting and practice management, but it's truly to appreciate how such a software, when used well, can provide you those benefits. So we're just wanting you to benefit from investing in the right software to give you all that information. So as I said, the discipline of record keeping. A practice management legal accounting software would give you that discipline from get-go, would at least facilitate for you to build a discipline upon. It would give you all those best practices tools that even if you're not aware of, can give you those output documents if you follow certain steps. Record keeping of all your financial records, especially a legal accounting software, is going to really help you with your reconciliation. It's going to allow you to compare your bookkeeping records with your bank's records and give you that reconciliation statement. That benefits you greatly from not having to deal with nightmares of not doing reconciliation on a monthly basis. Because keep in mind, if you don't reconcile your trust and general, especially general, let's take an example. If you don't reconcile that, you're not particularly sure about the revenue and expenses that have incurred in a time period, which is always going to leave you with kind of a feeling of emptiness of not truly understanding the profit and loss of your business, right? Because reconciling is really about confirming the numbers that you had to deal with in that particular time period. If $500 was moved from trust to general in the month of September, that means you just made $500 revenue for your business. Now, if you've actually made it, but you've not captured it, or you've failed to do that transfer and you do it in October, then the money is actually recognized as revenue in October and not September. If you're closing your quarter or if you're closing your month in September, you're going to close it without that $500 revenue reflecting. That's just a very simple example, okay? So legal accounting software can give you those checklists, can give you those warnings, can provide you with all the information you need to build a discipline around. You have to build that discipline no matter what legal accounting practice management softwares can do. If you as a legal professional cannot bring that discipline, it's going to be harder. You know, a software is as good as you use it, okay? But if you use it well, then there are a lot of benefits to it, including the discipline that it can drive you towards and the best practices that it can drive you towards, not just discipline, right? So compliance, legal accounting software certainly should ensure compliance from a law society standpoint, okay? Gives you the ease of use. So cloud software obviously gives you phenomenal ease of use in terms of anytime access to information. When you're in a court just dealing with a client, you can quickly do a client intake right there. If you have to generate an invoice, you can do so as long as you have an internet-connected device. So there are obviously benefits that are important for the modern legal professional that legal accounting softwares, more so cloud-based softwares can provide. Okay, but it's important that you make that research, do that research, figure out the pros and cons, and if the pros outweigh the cons, then you obviously go and select an appropriate product that's meaningful for you. Okay. Now, this particular webinar will be recorded and available to you as early as Monday, Tuesday next week. So I would kind of leave the screen for a quick second so that you can quickly understand it. For those who do use uLaw today, this is all embedded right within the product. Every document is very much in line with the Law Society's guidelines across provinces in Canada. But for those who don't use the software or don't specifically use uLaw, there are these audit references that we would love for you to review so that you can build a discipline around the practice that you have and be audit ready from day one. Okay, spot audits, there's an audit checklist. There's also a frequently asked question. Obviously, these portal websites are still LSUC. I think they would be changed to LSO automatically. And to the last point that I mentioned about the rules of professional conduct. So if you are, there you go, LSUC has been changed, would automatically change to LSO if you click that link. The rules of professional conduct. Ontario has these different 7 or 8 chapters they talk about. So there's actually 7, right? From citation, interpretation, and integrity, right? A lawyer's professional duty to act honorably and with integrity, relationship with clients. So a lot of what we spoke about with regards to the practice management also applies to Chapter 3 of the professional conduct. And then there's obviously the practice of law, the relationship to, how you deal with administration of justice. Are you in time to the court, or are you, always late to court? Types of things. The relationship with students, employees, and others. We've heard some horror stories of recent surveys that were conducted. So yeah, it's very important. And also in British Columbia, you have a website, and you can Google this. There's a code of professional conduct. They actually have a book as well. And they have very similar to that. They have from Chapter 1 to, I believe, Chapter 7 as well. Could be wrong. Yeah, they have Chapter 7. So kindly just review them. These are important for you to know and be aware. Ignorance is not bliss sometimes. So kindly do review this and be a very prepared legal professional from day one so that you can face those audits with a big smile on your face. Okay? That's pretty much all I had from my perspective. And again, we are at uLaw a very proud Canadian legal accounting and practice management software. Really, our claim to fame is the ability to serve our clients with respect and humility, and the fact that we have Law Society compliance built right into the product, making it easier for you and convenient for you, and very Canadian, if you will, to run your business. And if you're in the lookout for a legal accounting product, we encourage you to visit our website. We offer a no obligation 30-day trial for you to check us out. Okay, so thank you once again for joining us in today's webinar, and have yourself a fantastic weekend. Thank you.